Hi, my name is Daniel Posney, and this is how to heal or how to move through the overwhelm in your life. And I'm kind of giggling to myself right now because, you know, as long as you could be doing something and then you get in front of the camera, put a mic in your hand, at least me, you start feeling this anxiety. And I've got all my notes in order. I'm totally prepared. I've been preparing this for months, and still there's this little thing inside of me that wants to go to overwhelm, wants to go to anxiety. And the best that I can do, that I've done in all my session work, is realize that it's not me. I've done all the preparation that I need to do. And once I start kind of getting into the flow of the session or the workshop or something, it all comes out, and I get to the end of it and go, wow, that was fantastic. And Daniel, the person, the character, couldn't have put that all together without the help of spirit, without the help of consciousness. So I'm just reminding myself about that. And then I look at the Zoom call, and there was going to be over 40 people signed up, and it doesn't look like there's that many people on the call. And then that anxiety, well, maybe there's something technical that happened. And all I can do is just be in the moment and be present with it, and then continue on, and know that everybody that couldn't make it on the call is going to get a recording. So I'm doing the best that I can do in the moment. And that to me has kind of been one of the greatest tools. Is my mind wants to take me off somewhere, but if I'm staying present, okay, what can I change? What can I do? And then allow spirit just to kind of run the show. So here we go. Just to let you know that I am going to record this. So if you don't want to be on a recording, just shut off your video. If you don't want to be heard, actually, I think you're all muted right now. But if you don't want to have your face shown on a recording, just turn your video off, and it's in your lower left-hand side. This is stop video. All right, so here's what we're going to talk about. And this is going to be a really interesting blend of my direct experience, some psychological concepts that I've kind of discovered and researched over the years, some pragmatic ideas and tools. There's going to be some spiritual concepts, some metaphysical ideas. It's just going to be kind of a blend with this, but that's kind of how I work in my session work. Is I kind of use all these different avenues and perspectives to kind of open up to a higher understanding. And that may not even be the highest understanding, but it's the highest one that I can kind of grab onto. So it's going to be a blend of that, and it's going to really kind of challenge maybe your concept of overwhelmed and why it's there and all that. So, but that's why you signed up for this. So I'm really excited about this because this is my passion, to talk about something, teach about something that I'm embodying and that I'm currently working on and have worked on in a deeper way. So I try not to talk about too many things that I don't know anything about. So here we go. So the first thing we're going to go into is the definition of overwhelm. And you can interchange the word overwhelm with anxiety because it's really closely linked with that. So, and all the things that I want to talk about, I want to know what the original definition of that thing is, and then how it plays out in our life. The next thing is this idea of masculine and feminine energy. And if this is new to you, it's just this idea that we have certain characteristics of ourself and aspects of our being and our personality, the way that we kind of move in the world. So, you might think of masculine as male and feminine as female, but it's, these days it's all over. So we're a mix of all that stuff. And there are certain aspects of the feminine and the masculine that kind of act in a certain way, or kind of are showing up in a certain way. Like divine masculine is kind of this, when I want to really take responsibility for something and be in integrity and go forward and make that phone call and do that thing and fix that thing, it's this forward momentum. And it's kind of like why men have a penis. It's like this forward momentum thing. So it's this, I'm going to take charge of this. I'm going to take responsibility for this. But it's also something that women have when they want to take responsibility and get shit done and do this and take care of that. It's a masculine energy. Now, the feminine energy is that part of me that when my daughter was born, I'm in tears and I'm holding her and I'm nurturing her and I'm kissing her forehead. And, it's like I take the time out of my day to love and to nurture. And if someone wants to rub my feet and I say, yes, that's that feminine energy that's allowing me to receive. So it's more like coming in, and that's why women have a vagina. So it's kind of that. I'm kind of joking around a little bit, but it's kind of that going forward and receiving kind of thing. And you can see kind of the aspects of the anatomy of the body where it kind of plays that out. But it does go a lot deeper than that. So what happens in our world, and I'll talk more about this later, but what happens in our world is that those energies can tend to get out of balance just by the way the world is, or the way that our father told us, don't be such a sissy, or our mother said, be a man and man up. And it caused us to be out of balance in our own natural energies. And so we kind of moved in a certain way to maybe make other people happy, or to fit into this classroom, or fit into this basketball game when we were in 5th grade or something. It's just, we tend to get a little bit out of balance by just the effects of the world. And a lot of the work that I do tends to kind of bring that balance back in. And so for women, I tend to attract women that are leaning more into their masculine energy, because they feel they need to get stuff done or be successful in what amounts to a male-dominated world. So, and then of course, because I leaned more into my feminine energy when I was younger, because I wanted to feel more peaceful and loving and calm, that's more of a feminine energy. So, I needed to kind of balance that out in my own life. So I tend to attract men that want to balance that out. The next thing is my own story of obligation and guilt. So that's all, again, wrapped up into overwhelm and anxiety when you're in this constantly feeling guilty that you should do this. And if you don't, you're going to lose love from this person. And then there's this obligation, to continue this cycle of being a people pleaser and all this kind of thing. So I've got a good story about that. And it's not who I am now, but I remember just enough of it so I can tell the story to you, so that we have a stronger connection. And you can kind of, it's this beautiful thing that happens when I tell just a little bit of my story, and you go, oh, wow, he kind of knows what I'm feeling. He's like reading my life right now. And your walls start to come down, and you start to feel comfortable and receptive to change, to heal, to integrate. And otherwise you feel like no one knows what my life has been, and no one knows how I feel. But I know that there's something that happens when we get together like this. There's this law of attraction. And law of attraction kind of states, we attract like vibration, or like consciousness, or like energy. And like all the stuff that I tend to talk about, there's always like a scientific truth to it, because I didn't want to get bullshitted by just spirituality. I wanted to know the truth of things so I could fully embrace this spiritual idea. So I'm going to talk a little bit about maybe some quantum physics, like when there's a vibration, there's a resonance with another like or similar vibration. And if you think of everything as a vibration, consciousness, energy, color, emotion, all has a certain frequency, it will tend to attract a like vibration. And that, if you can remember that one little piece about vibration, it goes a long way to understanding why you have overwhelm, or why that you act and have the life that you do that may feel out of balance. So remember that one piece about vibration and frequency. And you are a vibrating being of frequency. So remember that piece. Next thing I'm going to tell you what benefits that you're going to have with this workshop. And it's actually more than what I've written down about the benefits, because it just kind of affects every aspect of your life. When you move from going into a workshop or a counseling or a coaching or a therapy outside of just only speaking about this and feeling better about it, into the deepest understanding of why this keeps getting created, and some things that are unprovable but feel right and feel truthful to you, when you get into that kind of place, wow, it feels so empowering that I've been living this life of overwhelm and guilt and obligation and not trusting and all this stuff, but there's a reason for it. And that thing I can shift. If only I could find out or imagine where originally it came from. That kind of, it takes a lot of the energy out of the whole thing. So we're going to get into that. And then I want to talk about the pain, because it's good to talk about the pain. It's good to talk about how this is causing suffering in my life, but what it would be like to not have that pain and suffering in my life, because I always thought that, it's just this way and I've got to just have different things to help me deal with it or distract myself from it. But it's actually things that we haven't been taught that I'm going to share with you, that's going to really help to really, really shift that in your life. So then I want to talk about inner knowing. So inner knowing is kind of, the opposite of what creates overwhelm and anxiety. And it's not something that we spend a lot of time in, and we're not taught. It's not in our schools. Most of the time, it's not in our family and our upbringing, unless we go out and seek it. I've talked to just a small percentage of people that have this indoctrination and this teaching about inner knowing and intuition and, heartfelt living and all that stuff. And you go, wow, those people are freaks. I'm joking. I'm a joker. So it's more like, wow, those people are so different. Um, but we're normally not taught this thing. We're normally not taught about inner knowing. We, at the most we might get is something like what I got, follow your instincts or follow your gut or follow your heart, but not much in-depth understanding of that and where that comes from and how to do that. So it's just kind of what's the word for this? Just a phrase that kind of helps us deal with, what we're living. And then we're going to do a meditation that's going to really help you get a reference point of what it feels like outside of overwhelm, outside of anxiety, and outside of your own mind. Because if we can get just a reference point of what that feels like, it not only we kind of get it in our memory, but our brain, our mind takes that as kind of a new program to run. And it'll do like it does with everything. It runs new processes and creates new neurological pathways and chemical responses fed to the body. And when you can start kind of creating more of those things, then you're on the way to kind of create it more and more in your life. But if we can have a reference point of what that feels like, that's kind of the key to starting that train down the track. Let's see. And then we're going to talk about the role of what's called the egoic identity. Now, I'll go into this in more detail, but I want to just at least share that this is not like the ego that says I'm the most badass quarterback in the world or I'm the most beautiful cheerleader. It's not that kind of thing. It's more the egoic identity is this aspect of us that takes the identity from the outside world and its experiences with the outside world, and it kind of gathers this information and it says, this is me. That's kind of my understanding in the most simplest form of what the egoic identity. So instead of just knowing myself as a presence or a consciousness, it looks at the world and how it interacts with the world and what the world does to it as to who it is. So we're going to talk about the kind of role in that and how it's just kind of gotten crazy, just in the way that it shows itself, and how we can bring that back down to the size that it's supposed to be and have it work more for us instead of itself. So if you can think of the egoic identity as kind of I kind of think of like little guy on my shoulder that's always giving me chatter, all these thoughts all the time. And most of the time, those thoughts are not good for me, but it's so manipulative. So, how to process and heal overwhelm. We're going to really get into not only kind of a psycho-spiritual, metaphysical idea or psychological ideas, but also pragmatic and practical things that you can do to curb and heal that overwhelm. So that's kind of how I do things, is I'm a blend of the spiritual and the pragmatic with compassion thrown into that mix. Also moving stuck energy, that if we could move stuck energy in our body, in our kind of in our field, it goes a long way to not feeling or not creating more overwhelm and anxiety. But what we tend to do is we kind of keep it all inside of us. And I can start to get like this vision of a scared mouse inside of a cage, and I start to feel that way. And sometimes that I'm just kind of reacting the best way that I can. But it's only because we keep all this energy inside of us sometimes. And there's so many great techniques that we can do to release that energy so that we can kind of get to a more centered, balanced place. So I've got some of that. Reevaluating your life purpose. You know, this needs to be talked about, because when we're feeling overwhelmed, when we're feeling anxiety, sometimes it's a signal that we're not in the right place. Relationship with someone else, a relationship with ourselves, a relationship with our job or our career. There's something that our body actually knows it's out of alignment with. So we need to look at that. We need to look at what we're doing in our life. Like when I was, I was a programmer for about 15 years. And there's a lot of anxiety and overwhelm in that. And I was smart, so I could figure this stuff out, and just give me a problem that you want solved and I can solve it. But I always felt this anxiety and this overwhelm about what I was doing. And I look at it now, and it's because it wasn't really my passion. I was good at it because I was smart with it, and I was kind of creative in like a Leonardo da Vinci kind of way, these different fixes for these things. But it really wasn't me. It really wasn't the me and my truth. It was me and my head and my intelligence. So sometimes there just needs to be an honest look at your life and find out what really light you up, what really give you joy. And we'll go into that. The other thing is that I've created something called a universal statement of being. And this, I wouldn't be able to do 20 years ago, but I'm able to do it now. And it's just a statement of who I am in this really determined, confident, present, really speaking my truth on who I am and what I'm capable of, kind of thing. And not in a way that's, just saying these affirmations that I hope will come true. It's really something that I've really spent some time with this, and it's powerful. And I want to share it with you later on so that you can kind of get into that feeling, because that's how it was shared with me. Someone said their statement of being to me, and I was like, holy shit, that's powerful. I wonder if I could someday say something like that. And it took me a little while, but you just kind of work with it, and it's a good thing to share with you. So, and then the last thing, I'm going to give you lots of practical tools, lots of resources and books and movies and videos and all these things, so you can kind of surround yourself with this and support yourself with these resources, and kind of back down from all the things that give you anxiety and worry and those kind of things. All right, so moving on here. So overwhelm is about anxiety, fear, inadequate planning or scheduling, and unhealthy boundaries. So when I really look at that, it kind of makes me think, really, is it about my inadequate planning and scheduling? Well, if I'm really honest with myself, there's a tendency sometimes for me to I'll want to go for a hike, and I really want to go for a hike, but I want to do something on the computer. And I'm getting lost in the computer, and my time for a hike is shrunk down and shrunk down and shrunk down. And I'm okay, just 10 more minutes, 10 more minutes. And then right as I'm on the edge of having just barely any hike time left, my wife comes in and asks me to do something because I'm there. I'm on the computer. I'm not doing too much. And then I get overwhelmed. Oh my gosh, you're feeding me too many things to do, or I was supposed to go on a hike. So that was my inadequate planning or scheduling on my part. I should have been better at sticking to my plan and sticking to my schedule. And it's only that I didn't follow through on that. So then the question becomes, why did I do that? How does that make me feel when I feel overwhelmed like that? Why did I not create the time for that? And, usually it all goes back down to feeling insignificant or feeling unworthy or something like that. So there is like kind of a base emotion that we're going to be able to get to. The other thing that's been said about overwhelm is it's an indulgent emotion. And what's meant by that is kind of, it's how do you explain it? It doesn't need to be felt, but when we feel this overwhelm, it's kind of this it's apathetic. And sometimes when I'm feeling overwhelmed, there's this feeling that's kind of if you can think of, again, the mind going, okay, how do we really want to feel about this? Oh, let's really make it into something. And it really kind of expands into this big feeling of overwhelm and anxiety and apathy. And like all of our feelings that we've ever had in our life of being overwhelmed or an anxiety all come up into this one moment. So it's really, I guess, indulgent is a pretty good word. So the word indulgent, I wanted to look up the definition of this too: done or enjoyed as a special treat or pleasure. It's not quite a pleasure, but then it is kind of this special thing that we add on to our emotions. Just kind of a fun fact. So let's see. This is not a workshop that you're just going to get, different tools and things. If we're going to really go deep on this stuff. So be prepared to take some breaths, and I'll do the same. And if we agree to just kind of take a breath and let this stuff settle. Sometimes I talk fast, sometimes I get passionate about these things. So I'll remember to take a breath and let these new ideas just kind of relax into you. And just realize that as these new concepts are kind of presented to you, sometimes your mind is going to come up with a reaction. And that's its desire to kind of stay in the old. But what we're doing here is we're kind of challenging that. We're kind of challenging the old ideas, and we're digging in deeper than maybe you've gone before. So it can be challenging, and it can feel like it's too much for the mind to process. But there's also something going on in your heart and in your body consciousness that feels like this is right, feels like this is true. This is really good. I feel really good about this. And then at the same time, the mind wants to come up with something that counteracts that. It wants to go back into, yeah, but. So if you find yourself feeling, I know, Daniel, but, that's the sign that you can just let that just settle back down and keep on being open. Okay, here we go. We'll discover and understand, and then we'll feel, and then we'll shift. And we'll do it with a blend of compassion, pragmatic spirituality, psychology, and wisdom, all from my direct experience and other people that I've talked to. Let's see, what you're going to get to the core of why your life can be overwhelming and what to do about it. You're going to get real effective tools to balance your doing and your being, and your giving and your receiving. You're going to understand more of your unique situation with unbiased, non-judgmental listening by me, and practical guidance that promises to go beyond what you previously learned. Solid techniques and understanding to heal and integrate old emotional wounds. And then, of course, there's going to be an opportunity for you and I to work directly. Let's see, after the workshop, you'll move closer to a balanced masculine, which is certain, confident but not cocky, protective but not possessive, trusting, problem solver. The Rock, not The Rock the actor, The Rock creates a safe container for the feminine. and a provider that doesn't have to control the way that money is spent or things are done. And then there's the balanced masculine or balanced feminine, creative, intuitive, emotionally balanced, trusting, open, vulnerable, and loving, nurturing, confident, expressive, and feel secure and safe with the balanced masculine. Imagine that. That's a pretty good feeling. Let's see. Although you may look successful, you feel an energetic imbalance in your relationships and career and find yourself focused outwards. And this shows up in ways that are through obligation and people pleasing and doing and giving and protecting and feeling guilt. Now, all those things are all kind of can be positioned or shown in a way that's a good thing. It's a good way of being a person, that I'm a giving person. Or some people, you know, it's a very Christian thing to do. It's a very, I don't know, there's so many different ways of saying this. And they are really good qualities in a person. But if we're doing it in a way out of guilt or obligation, or that it's going to make us something, that's when we kind of get into trouble there. It kind of gets to be an unhealthy, inauthentic way of being. And that may be challenging to somebody that kind of derives their specialness from this, like I did, that I derive some love and attention and affection and admiration from people by being this loving, giving, supportive, people pleaser kind of person. And if you were to talk to me about this 20 years ago, I might have gotten a little pissed off, and I would say, no, you're wrong. I'm a good person, damn it. And you are a good person. It's just that if you're really honest with yourself, there's this feeling of resentment that starts to build up when you're in this overwhelm and anxiousness and guilt and obligation for other people. And there's just so much suffering in the world. I've got to just do what I can and do this work. And it starts to play on you, like, why isn't, you know, if someone like from a religious background, I've heard this, that they're trying to do God's work and they're doing all this thing to help the homeless and the hungry and all this. And then, but inside they're kind of saying, why has God given me these hardships? Why has God given me this suffering? Why can't I make enough money? Or why did I have a miscarriage or something? And they start getting resentful of God. Or someone that's not a religious person, and they'll be doing all this work to kind of build up the love of, you know, around themselves. And then they don't get love back to themselves, like I was thinking. And I would get resentful, and I would say, why is it that I'm doing all this for, I'm such a good person, and then no one ever does anything for me? And really what was happening, I was just kind of had like an energy field of protection that no one could cross that line. And I presented myself in a way that was like, oh no, I don't need any help. I'm just here. I'm a wise giver. And it just leads to self-hatred, because I kept getting myself in situations that I wasn't really excited to be in. So, and what happens from that is that you start to forget who you are and what your own needs are. You think that you don't have any needs, that your needs are actually other people's needs. Listen, I've heard that one so many times, that my needs are other people's needs. I'm here to support other people. I want to call you out on that one, because really, you do have needs, and you do need love. You do need support. And when you get that love and that support, and you feel so fulfilled inside, your love that you give to people can be so authentic and so pure, and that feels so much better than the other way of doing it. All right. Oh, so I was wondering, someone asked me, a couple people asked me like where I get my philosophy about things, the way I talk about things. And someone asks, are you in the heretical teachings? And I didn't really know what that was, but I looked it up. And I guess, not knowing about it, but thinking the way that I talk about things, it might be heretical in that there are some things that maybe religion talks about things to in an unhealthy way over the years, being in guilt and not having a direct connection with creator, God, source. And yeah, I do kind of speak opposite of that. So I guess there's a part of me that is kind of heretical teachings. If I were to really dive into it, I might go, wow, this sounds like the way I talk. And the other thing is that I've been asked if I'm referencing the DSM, which is the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual for Psychology. And I never knew about it, but you spend enough time doing this work, you start to get the concepts and you start to get the patterns of people. And I've often thought that, gee, wouldn't it be great if there's this manual that said, if the person has this experience in childhood, then it leads to this. And that's probably what the DSM is. But I don't reference it, but it just comes from talking to people. It just comes from listening to people and their stories and how it's kind of worked out for them or not. So, but I do know that, like, when a child has a father that is somehow not fully there, and the father is alcoholic or an addict, or just not there. Usually, if there's a daughter involved in this, she's trying to get his attention, trying to get his love, and a lot of times I see the daughter turns into somebody that leans more into her masculine energy, or does a whole bunch of stuff and is successful at everything, and that's awesome. And they go out into a man's world, into men's, male dominated industries, into IT and education and stocks and police force and military, and they kick ass. They do really well in it, at the expense of their feminine nature, at the expense of their creative, expressive, sensual, sexual energy. And that's what I run into a lot. And then on the other side, if a man doesn't have that loving, nurturing connection with his mother, there'll be some insecurities. There might be some porn addiction. There might be some seeking love outside by being a people pleaser and all those kind of things. So some of the stuff I know because I've lived some of it, and I've been in front of a lot of as a listener. Although childhood traumas are at the root of the overwhelm that we feel, these conditions are not the cause of childhood trauma. In fact, there's this amazing trauma expert named Gabor Mate. You should look him up to get more information about this. He says, trauma is not what happens to us, but what happens inside of us as a result of what happens to us. And that trauma is manifested in a disconnection from self. Let me say this again, because this one is really powerful. Trauma is not what happens to us, but what happens inside of us as a result of what happens to us. And that trauma is manifested in a disconnection from self. And so now we got to take a moment to talk about what the self is. So when he's saying is disconnection from self, my interpretation of that is there's a knowing self. There's an ever-present consciousness of self. This is loving awareness of being. And then when trauma happens, we get disconnected from that. And my eyes start tearing up when I talk about that. That we're walking the planet, disconnection from that self. And we have different ways that we learn how to cope with that. And I think that is one of the deepest longings that we can have, is to get reconnected with that self. And in the meantime, we're walking the planet lost in that. And we distract ourselves. And we have different addictions. We have sexual addictions. We have alcohol, drug addictions. We take medications. We go on, extensive trips for the sole purpose of distracting ourselves and not actually to love ourselves. We have all these different techniques to find a way through this disconnection that happened. And like me, I kind of put on a mask after that disconnection. I became a kind of a different persona. And that was that disconnection. And it's this, I remember it happening. It probably happened before this, but this is the major moment that happened in my life when I was 12 and my dad was, killed in a car accident. And it struck me so surprisingly that it just rocked my world, because he was the guy, he was the one that was the balance of that masculine and feminine. So that when that happened, it just completely disconnected me from my playful, curious, loving, heart-centered self. And I went, it clicked into something else. So it's been a long time of trying to find that again, of that being reconnected with my original, pure, true self. So you might hear that term around as, true self. That's the one that's there before the conditioning. So let me say this really clear. Your true self, pure self, the original self is that which is there before your conditioning. And the conditioning is what happens with well-meaning family and friends that cause your mind to come up with some story about yourself. Here's a short little story. A woman as a little girl is walking down the street, 3 years old. She's walking down the street with her little friend who's also the same age. This little girl, number one, she has a wonderful grandfather. He is so loving and so caring, and he sees them walking down the street. So he kind of skips on over there and he holds out his hand to hold his granddaughter's hand. And then he looks over at the other girl and he holds out his other hand. Well, girl number one turns into a young girl and into a woman that has a belief that men will leave her for another girl. And it's completely not true. But that's what happened. It doesn't have to be a traumatic thing. It's just stuff like that can happen where the mind will interpret this as a traumatic situation. So, I've heard people say, I don't have any trauma. Well, if you're born of the womb, you have some sort of trauma. If you've been walking down the street enjoying your day and you have a loving grandfather, you might have something that was perceived as traumatic. So stuff just happens. So when I talk about these things that this happened in my childhood or because of the relationship with my parents, it's not because of my parents. It's not because of me. It just happens. Like the conditions were right. The law of attraction took place and things came together in this certain way that caused this feeling from my mind. It caused this perception of my mind. And then once it launched into that perception, my chemical responses kicked in. And then it talked to my body and said, okay, respond this way. And then they start to have this communication going on. And then it leads to illness and disease and pain and all the kind of stuff. So got to know that part. It's really important that you kind of just touch on this part that traumas and perceptions of the mind all are at the kind of the root of us living a life of overwhelm and anxiety and worry and all those kind of negative or detrimental ways of being. It all stems from some original thing in childhood. In fact, what they say in psychology is between birth and 8 years old is when we get our emotional traumas. And it's that time that we're trying to, as a being, a new being on this earth with 8 billion other beings, that the mind is created as I kind of think of it like a cloud. The egoic identity is created like a kind of a cloud that follows us everywhere. It's nothing real. It doesn't even exist, but it's created with a blend of thoughts and beliefs and perceptions. And that becomes the story of who we are. And it does this great thing. It does this thing of setting us separate from everyone else. But in that, there's this, inside of that thing, there's this insidious, manipulative core to it. And it can get really strong in our life and it can kind of convince us of things that aren't really true. So take that little piece that I'm talking about right now and just kind of put it off to the side and just go, okay, maybe I should look more into that. Doesn't mean you need to dive into psychology, but just kind of take that. That's all you need to know for right now. All right, let's move on and let's let that just settle. So how about we all just take a deep breath? That was a lot. That's a lot of information. It's a lot, maybe some new information, maybe not, but it's just a lot of information. So just let that settle. Thank you. Now we'll move on. All right. So My story. Let's go into my story. For most of my life, as far back as I can remember, I had guilt and obligation. I had feelings of insignificance, feeling underappreciated, unacknowledged. Um, those are all just things I can really track back to different phases of my life where it just kind of got reinforced and reinforced and reinforced. And I'll talk more about that later. But through traumas and through experiences in my life, wires got crossed. And there were early negative experience or perceived negative experiences in my life. Don't get me wrong, some of those experiences of trauma were very real, but add on to that all this other, not so real perceived traumatic experiences. So it's a blend of real trauma and perceived trauma, and together it doesn't even matter anymore. It's just, it's all traumatic. My dad was working two jobs, and I would see him lucky if I saw him on the weekend, because I think he would get up at like 4 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning, and go to one job and then leave that job and go to another job. And the whole idea was he was working two jobs to, support the family and the house and all that. We lived in Orange County, California. And my mom and dad also had this idea of taking us on a trip to Africa and to Europe someday. And so he was working jobs to make all this stuff happen. And, now when I look back at that time, he was a dad when he was about 19 or 20. And he had a little, daughter, my sister. And then 2 years later, they became pregnant again. But number one child turned into three kids because I'm a twin. So he's got three kids. He got two babies, screaming babies, and a 2-year-old. And so he's working two jobs and he did so many things, man. He was a cook. He had like a upholstery business. He was a machinist. He was a master scuba diver. He did all these things. But now I look back at that kind of lifestyle and what was happening, man, there was overwhelm there. And I can completely feel that, how he's always just trying to make it work, trying to go. And he was such a great guy and everybody liked him. And I probably got some of those qualities from him and some of those things about, seeking love from other people, because everybody kind of pulled from him. And now I see the pattern that I kind of took on, either energetically or physically or psychologically, that I pulled some of those patterns from my own father of being this nice person. And then also because of that, people pulling energy from you, wanting you to help with this and do that, or be at this party because everybody likes you. All those things kind of pull you out and starts to become overwhelmed. So I imagine that when he died, I imagine that when he had the car accident and he was killed instantly, that there was a big relief. Not because he wanted to leave the family, but because all of his overwhelm was gone. And that's really that's caused me some meditation, some deep thought about that, about how I want to shift that in my own life and how I want to kind of break that chain. So, but before I did that, I became a caretaker. I became a people pleaser. And I got my identity from how I showed up in the world and how I did things for people, and built up resentment and built up what's called victim consciousness. And if you haven't heard of this phrase or this term, it's just the idea that, you kind of walk around going, why me? And why does shit keep on happening to me? And, either a little bit or a lot. Or you might think that another person is a victim. And that's also kind of being in that state, as if you believe someone else is a victim. I know that there can be victimized people, but when you are in the consciousness of victimhood, that's a different thing. So when you're in the consciousness of victimhood, is that you're just kind of become this person that's kind of lost himself, and whatever you're doing, that you're going to be taken excuse me, you're going to be taken advantage of. People are going to hurt you. People are going to steal from you. You know, it's that kind of thing. You're in the consciousness of that. Now, to get a better understanding of that, if you were in Christ consciousness or Buddha consciousness or something, you would be living in a different way. Not only would you think differently, but you would be kind of existing in a different way. So also put that one in back there, that overwhelm, anxiety, distrusting, people pleaser, all is kind of victim consciousness fits in there sometimes too. So how do I know this stuff? All right, let's see what else we got here. Many people live and die by drawing exclusively on the energy derived from their physical processes. Say that again. Many people live and die by drawing exclusively on the energy derived from their physical processes. That means they get who they are by their environment, by how they engage in the world. But this way of living can drain us energetically, and it leaves us feeling overwhelmed and depleted. So that's kind of at the core of this whole overwhelm and anxiety, is that it's we get ourselves, our identity of ourselves and our purpose in life about what we do. But we don't really, we're not really taught that what we should really be focused on, how we feel. It's not really what you do, it's about how it makes you feel. And if it makes you feel in an awesome way, in a joyful way, that's fantastic. But if you're doing something out of some kind of guilt or obligation, or you don't know any better, and it's making you feel like crap, there's a misalignment there. So really what we need to be looking at is that, why are we doing this? What's going on in life, and how is it making us feel? So if I had kind of the time to kind of really think about that back when I was being a technician, I would probably answer the question, I'm just trying to, make money. I'm trying to support my family, and that's a very valid response. And I know now that it's only because I wasn't consciously living. I was just trying to get by. I was just trying to react to the world in the best way that I could. And I was, and you have been. But there's this other way of living that just kind of is more empowering, is more conscious, is more feeling. And it has a way of shifting how you live your life and what you do in your life, that you start focusing on, actually, does this make me feel good? Okay. Let's see. Eventually that energy dries up and we can start feeling resentful in others, and ask yourself, why do I give and give and nobody seems to give to me? And then self-hatred comes in. I talked about that. Let's see. So I want to share with you what I do. So just a moment to why I'm here talking about this. It's about time I did this. I've kind of over the years changed the title of what I share with people, what I do. And the one that I'm with now is Ultimate Potential Coach. So I help people reach their ultimate potential. And I'm also a shamanic sound healer and a breathwork facilitator for over 15 years. And I'm a mix of pragmatism, knowledge, wisdom, and spirituality. So another way to say it is I'm a catalyst for emotional, physical, and spiritual healing, to cause others to live more authentically and in alignment with their soul. And it feels really good to say that I help other people do that, because that's really what I've done for myself, is that I was really out of alignment with my soul. I was in integrity with other people, but not in integrity with myself. And again, that taps right back into overwhelm and anxiety, is because I'm not feeling in integrity with myself. These emotions and these feelings and the body pains and all those kind of things are all tapped into, that you're not in alignment with yourself and what's happening. And as a side note, I worked with people that have had Lyme disease, autoimmune disorder, and stuff like that, it's really, when you talk to them, they're in some sort of relationship, whether it's with a person or with a career, that they're not in alignment with, and it's not really utilizing them the best in their natural way of being. Like I was working with a woman that was an architect in Manhattan, and now she's like a teacher for business women goddesses, helping them tap into their goddess energy. So you can imagine here she's in her like complete freedom and full expression of this very sexual, sensual, expressive, creative woman who just loves to be in this energy, and then take her and put her into a male dominated architect world in Manhattan. So you could see how the body is always trying to communicate with us. And when we listen to the body, it's always trying to say, something's not right here, something's not right. And that autoimmune disease, if you can think about it, is that it's the body attacking itself. So look into people like Louise Hay or Yvette Rose. Louise Hay wrote a little book that we have. It's called Heal Your Body. Another book to read from Yvette Rose is called Metaphysical Anatomy. And it's a Bible. I have it right on my shelf here. And it just kind of talks about all the emotional connection with illness. So overwhelm and anxiety leads to things, illnesses and things that are caused by stress and worry. Your parasympathetic nervous system is not functioning properly. What's the other one? Like when you drink a lot of coffee, your adrenals are shot. All that kind of stuff is all kind of tapped in, but it can be fixed. It can be corrected, but by going to the original cause of why it's originally happening. So let's say your adrenals and everything are whack, and you're just having a hard time, so you drink more coffee. And then you go to your job, and then it's just crazy and it's dramatic, and you just feel so overwhelmed in your job. But think about this. Is there any way, if you really are honest with yourself, or really look into yourself, is there any way that this subconscious need for chaos is something that somewhere in there you feel comfortable with, or you at least feel more alert with, or you at least feel more aware of your surroundings? So here's the theory. Like if you're a little kid and you have something traumatic happen to you, maybe a bunch of kids gang up on you and beat you up. So your next thing is to go, I'm just going to be aware of everything. And then so that kind of creates this pattern in your mind, being aware of everything, which is anxiety. And it leads to overwhelm. So, but you tell yourself, or your mind tells yourself inside, but if I'm that way, at least I'll be safe. So just give me an environment where there's chaos so that my senses are on all the time. I know it's kind of a weird concept, but it's one that I've seen quite a bit, that people will actually attract a job or a relationship that gives them more of that chaos. And it's when you talk to them and they say, yeah, my childhood was chaotic, and it was just that way. Everybody was yelling at each other and screaming at each other. And somewhere inside there, the mind made you believe that it was normal, or that it's a safe place to be. I know that's a weird thing, but actually can happen. All right, let's see. Oh yeah, so I was going to share with you more about my upbringing and what that led to. So I was looking at this and how things got kind of perpetuated for me feeling overwhelmed and anxiety. If you pull yourself out of blaming what's happening right now, and you look back at the childhood experience, you don't have to actually remember a certain instance, just like that woman walking down the street with a little friend and the grandfather. You don't have to remember or know a traumatic experience, but if you can imagine or take some time like she did and kind of look into that, you'll probably find something that is conducive to creating the trauma that caused you to be this certain way. So for instance, for me, my father dies unexpectedly. That I could imagine that little 12-year-old boy being there saying, wow, my whole rug got pulled out from under me. Now I'm going into, what was I in, 7th grade? Now I got to go into 7th grade where you got to show up completely different than you did in elementary school, right? And now I've got to find myself. I was hoping that, at that time I would learn how to, chase girls and drink a beer and fight and all those things. And that just wasn't there. It kind of, now like the insecurity starts to kick in, or more so maybe. Maybe the insecurity was there because I was a twin. I had to maybe fight for my food, fight for the breast or something. I don't know. Um, and then there's this idea that, maybe I took on some overwhelm from my father and his experience with being a father and having 3 kids and 2 jobs and all that. We also moved a lot. That also causes more insecurity in my life. What about my mother's overwhelm? What about her overwhelm with being pregnant with twins and going to have 3 kids to take care of? And you're not wealthy, and that's got to play a part. And I was in the womb for 9 months with that feeling. That gets right into the womb. What about when I was in high school and I was doing cocaine and drinking? That also, I mean, you can see where the insecurity and the anxiety leads to a drug that creates more insecurity and more anxiety. And then worrying about getting caught. And, it leads into more and more perpetuating this thing. And back then I would have said, well, this just keeps on happening to me. Well, think of it this way. Think that we all kind of live in a world or reality or dimension. Let's simplify it as a room. That the way that where you've been living your life is in a room. And that room has a certain vibration to it. In fact, the floor is vibrating in this specific frequency, and it vibrates in the frequency of guilt. All emotions have a certain frequency. So guilt is vibrating in a certain frequency, and then obligation also is a similar frequency. And then distrust is also in there too, is a similar frequency. So all these certain things are all existing in the room that you live in, that you see the world from, that you get the perceptions of yourself in. So, and then here it is, you're trying to fix the problem from within the room. Doesn't that just blow your mind that, oh my God, how can I fix this by still being in the room? And you try and do things, and you try and have a couple more martinis, you try and go, on a trip, or you do this thing and you hope you'll get it fixed in this relationship or whatever. But if you're still in the room, you're still in the room. So now put yourself in a hot air balloon, hovering in that frequency, because the sandbags that are attached to your hot air balloon are filled with all the limiting beliefs and all your experiences and all your conditioning of your life. And that's what's keeping you held down in that frequency of that room. Then imagine that you go and you discover these things. You look at where they came from, and you start to understand them. And that's like cutting the ties of those sandbags, and they drop down to where they belong in the room. And then your hot air balloon starts rising up into another room. And maybe it doesn't rise high enough to be like fully enlightened being, but it does remove yourself from that room. And still you're close enough to know what guilt and obligation feels like, and what overwhelm feels like, what anxiety feels like. But you don't exist in that the whole time. You kind of trickles, it kind of floats up to your balloon every once in a while, but it doesn't pull you back down. And that's the cool thing that I realized about my life, is that I remember what those feelings felt like enough so I can connect with you, enough so I can be empathetic with you and be in compassion with that feeling. But it doesn't take me down anymore. So, so when I was, when I was 19, 20 years old, I joined the Navy. And God, that's such a funny thing that I would be in the Navy, in the military, someone that, detests authority, that I would be in the military, but I was. And it just really out of my element, not really wanting to be there, but loving to be out on the ocean on a ship. It was 5 years, and I was on 2 different ships, one ship on the East Coast. So I went to the Mediterranean. This is all back in the 80s. And then I got another ship on the West Coast. Now I was on the Pacific, in the North Pacific, chasing the Russian submarines and fixing stuff, and just being out at sea for 6 months at a time. And I really loved that expanse of the space of the ocean. When there were storms, when there were 35-foot seas, and I'm hanging onto the rail, and I'm loving being out there. It was a really fun time. Everyone else is down below getting sick, and I'm out there on the rail loving it. And it makes me wonder if in some other life I'm some adventurer traveler on a sailing ship of his own, that kind of thing, and loving that. And it's all kind of coming back to me. But there is that part of me that loves that open space and loves the ocean. And so what did I do? I went into a job that got me into a cubicle. I went into a job that got me into an enclosed space. And, if you take, the country boy and you put him into the city, into the cubicle kind of thing, you're going to get some anxiety. And, but I just found ways to deal with it. I would get a triple mint mocha frappuccino. I would drink 3, espressos and have a chocolate chip muffin. I would eat lots of sugar. And then afterwards I would have a couple martinis or gin and tonic, all these things that kind of just, everything was just adrenals on max load. We moved around a lot when I was a kid. Let's see. Then there's this thing that happened when I lived in Santa Barbara, on the outside looking like a beautiful life, triathlons, beach volleyball, surfing, martial arts, partying. It seemed like a pretty darn good life. In fact, I was married to a multi-millionaire for a little bit, and she was beautiful. And even that just played into the story too. Wow, you're just living the life. But my soul was kind of shrinking in my body. And it was kind of like, I knew this was happening, but I guess this is life. And I hope something or someone rescues me. But you just keep on pushing on and doing what you need to do and thinking that it's all normal because that's what everyone else is doing. So you might as well just stop your complaining and keep on living. And I did that for a while. But it kind of blew up. And I got to a point where went through divorce with my first marriage, went to a time when, my kids kind of left my life and couldn't get back with them. And then I just kind of disconnected from my job and the way I was living and went on this other track and started to find myself in more of a shamanic living philosophy, native wisdom, powwows and sweat lodges and drum circles. And just that was really kind of opened me up and, started to find myself more. I started to look within. I lived on a 4,000 acre property north of Santa Barbara, where I lived in a little tiny home for 3 years, and a lot of meditation, a lot of finding myself. And then I left that and I went on this 2,000-mile bicycle journey, more finding myself. There was a lot of kind of extracting myself from the way that I was living. And I started to get less and less overwhelmed and anxious. And I started to kind of open up and started to find my heart again and find that little Daniel that was inside of me. But I needed space to do that. And that's one thing that we don't really give ourselves a lot of, is that space to kind of find that. But that's really imperative that we give ourselves that. And it's not just going on a cruise or going on a trip. It's actually consciously looking into yourself and doing what they call self-inquiry or self-discovery. And what that is, it's just kind of, you look at the thoughts and beliefs that you carry as they come up, or just look at them. And then you start asking yourself questions like, where does that come from? Why do I feel that way? Why do I feel that I'm not worthy? Or why is it because of what my father used to tell me? And, you start doing it yourself. And lo and behold, it doesn't take very long, but you start to get insight into yourself. But the added step is to work on it. It's not just to discover, but actually to work on it. And you work on it with someone who kind of knows this process. And it becomes very liberating, very empowering. And those old feelings of overwhelm and anxiety and worry and guilt and shame and all those things start to fall away. And you realize that you're not that same person anymore. In fact, you've never been that person. It's actually been your mind. Your mind is the one that goes into overwhelm. Your mind is the one that goes into anxiety. And, we're going to go deeper into this concept, but I want to kind of plant the seed that you think that you're overwhelmed. You think that you're anxious. You think that you're worried. But if you're really, let's be really honest here. It's like, let's take this to court. Let's go into litigation with this. Is it really you, the awareness, or is it you, the mind? It's you, the mind. You're the one who is aware of it. I know that might be a new concept for you, but think of it this way. As I hold my two hands in the air, one is the hand of awareness, and the other one is the hand of egoic mind or egoic identity, and the thoughts and the beliefs and the fear and the worry and all that stuff. You're aware of it. As those feelings come up, you're aware of those feelings, and you've kind of married yourself to the two, and you called it me. So this process is just kind of pulling yourself out of that and looking at that relationship that you had and pulling apart from it and still noticing it, but you don't feed it anymore by saying, I am so anxious, or this, I'm just, I have a problem with this. It's really your mind, and that you've identified too much with it. So we'll go more into that. I know that's a pretty deep subject. After the bicycle journey, I realized that I was a sensitive empathic. So a sensitive empathic is someone that is very sensitive to energies and emotions, feelings, and they feel from empathetic means that they feel other people's energies and emotions. And on the one end, it's kind of it's so hard to feel the emotions of other people. But also, that's a good thing too, is that you feel the joy of other people and the joys of the world, and that kind of, it's really kind of a real opening feeling of the world in your life. So it's got this, yeah, it can really take me down of being so sensitive to feel these things. So we can talk about that more too, but it's really a sensitive empath needs to really have strong boundaries. They really need to know what their needs are. They can still be sensitive and feeling and have emotions, but they need to make sure that they are, really taken care of first. So I can talk about more of that. The other thing I've done is I've taken a 3,000-mile motorcycle journey. In fact, I think I calculated I've probably ridden over 100,000 miles on a motorcycle. But this one journey really helped me go from Sedona and a loop up through Washington, Oregon, California, back to Sedona, and find myself. And that's one thing that, I don't know, my astrological sign or my being a sensitive, I as a person need space to find myself. And I love being with my wife, and I also love being alone. So someone like me, if you're that kind of person, you need to make sure that you have space and that you have this time to take care of yourself. So you always giving to people can have a detrimental effect on you. I was coming up with this thought. I'm not entirely sure that we need to heal. I know that, I promote that idea that we need to heal. And I'm not really sure if that's the highest truth, but that's the reality that I live in. The reality that I live in is that we need to heal. I need to heal, or a better word is I need to integrate my childhood or my past traumas, or however you want to say that sounds the strongest and most empowering to you. On the other hand, I am not even sure that I'm actually here. I'm not actually sure that I'm here in this world, just like the feeling that I have when I'm in a dream. In the dream, I feel I'm there, but I'm always just the dreamer. So I know that's getting kind of deep. But I do know that we feel better and we create a much happier life when we heal and when we integrate our past life experiences and our traumas. So if you want to get really spiritual, philosophical about it, yeah, we probably are not here. We probably don't need to heal because we never left pure source energy, and we don't need to do anything. And we're here in this physical body, and it hurts sometimes, and it's an emotional place that we live in, that we're dreaming, and it has an effect on our reality that we're experiencing. So in order to have a better experience, a more alive, aware, awake, conscious experience, it's that healing that takes into consideration compassion and empathy, and realizing that there's these things that are playing out here in our lives. And when we kind of open up to that stuff, we just open ourselves to more joy, more enlivening experiences in our life. Let's take a little break. Take a nice deep breath. Hope you're doing okay. I know this is a lot of information, but there's a certain amount that I need to kind of push through to kind of get through. There's a barrier of the mind. And when I talk in this certain way, with the passion, with the information, with the wisdom and knowledge that comes with it, it has the effect of um, untangling the mind and releasing the heart. And that is such a good feeling. And you may be feeling that this is hard to understand or this is a lot or something. Yeah, it is. It is hard to understand, but it's not hard to know. It may feel like it's hard for you to get all these concepts in one thing. Yeah, it is. But your heart already feels it, and your heart is probably expanding with this like a light at the end of the tunnel kind of a feeling. That's the feeling that I had is keep telling me this stuff, keep showing me this stuff because this is showing me a light at the end of the tunnel because I was in the past, I was feeling like I don't want to jump ship, even though the ship is sinking. I don't want to jump ship and grab a life preserver that's not going to be there when I launch myself. But this is a life preserver that you can hold on to. It's this what I'm talking about is backed up by science, quantum physics, psychology, real life examples and experiences, spirituality, metaphysics. It just kind of has a lot of truth to it. And one of the best things that I hear from a lot of people is, God, this feels so good. This feels so truthful. Yeah, it does. That's how I felt about it too. I remember the first time that I kind of engaged in this kind of this philosophy or way of being or life, whatever this is, it's, I guess you would call it living more authentically. My girlfriend at the time, we had gotten into an argument and she said, well, if you're pissed at me, it's your shit to look at. And that's been something that I've always remembered. And that is the thing that hooked me. It pissed me off, but it hooked me and it intrigued me. And I said, if that's true to myself, I'm thinking, if that's true, then there's somewhere I can go and get more authority in myself and get more empowerment in myself so that I won't feel so overwhelmed and insecure and anxious and guilt ridden and all that stuff. Like there was a way that was inside of me, and I've been following that path ever since. All right, so the next part of this, this was really interesting to me. This what it came up here. Our emotions are indicators of how we are feeling about something. Anger comes from powerlessness. Anger comes from feeling powerless. Think about that. You feel powerless. You're in an argument. You have a choice. You could feel more powerless and sink into a ball and go further into victim consciousness, or you can get freaking angry. And that's kind of a step out of that. It's like the propellant, the catalyst to pull us out of that powerlessness. So it can really be an effective tool, not a way of being, but a tool. Anxiety comes from feeling off balance. Anxiety comes from feeling off balance. I feel anxious. I feel off balance. Something's not right. These are important to me to understand because it gives me a deeper reason why I'm feeling this emotion. It's just not a thing that happens and I've got to deal with this emotion because this person did something. That's the way that I used to think, is that this person did something and said something, made me feel angry. And then it stops there. But why did I feel angry? Oh, because I felt powerless, or I felt like I was being controlled, or I felt like something was being taken away, or I felt scared. Wow, it just, see how that just opens up? It opens up into a place you start to understand you more. Why do you feel overwhelmed? Why do you feel anxious? Because I feel out of balance. Because I committed to something that I don't feel good about. Because I said yes when I meant to say no. I said no when I went to say yes. Because I'm into my mind, and I've allowed my mind to make my decisions for me. That may be true, but now we have something. Fear comes from what you care about. Fear comes from what you care about. What you care about might be taken away. Apathy comes from being overextended. Apathy comes from being overextended or overwhelmed. If this is new for you, you're in a completely new place, that you've got some deeper understanding. It's not just that you feel this emotion and you just doing the best that you can and you just gotta, I don't know what, cope with it. Now you're at least, even now, where are we at? An hour, almost an hour and a half in. Now you're in a different place, a little deeper understanding, just a different perspective. Sometimes that it's just that little bit, that little deeper understanding that, like for me, just kind of open things up. And we'll go a little deep in the deep zone right now. Is that every moment that you make a choice, that you have a different perception, a different idea, a different understanding, you live in a different reality. Now, this isn't something that I can prove, but all the quantum physicists and interpreters of reality all kind of lean into this way, that there are multiple realities, dimension going on all at the same time. And that time and space are these contrived concepts. It doesn't really exist. So every time we make a choice like this, every time we have a new understanding, we live in the consciousness of that understanding, or the consciousness of that being. And you leave the old one back behind, sort of, as the previous reality. Still exists, still there, existing right now, but now you're here. And it's kind of a cool thing to kind of look back at that old one and go, yeah, I remember that. I remember not too long ago I was there, living in overwhelm and anxiety, not really knowing what to do about it. Now I live in the world, in the reality where I have this understanding or this consciousness. So understanding and consciousness, two different things. There's an understanding about, I understand this as a concept. And then consciousness is kind of the place I live with that. It's another good word is what I've embodied. So when you embody something, it's, you have the understanding of it, and you don't really need to understand it any further to live it. So you're embodying this consciousness. We've been accustomed to living in what might be called a wounded masculine society. This is my theory about where we live. It's a world driven towards overwhelm. And because of this, some men choose to lean more into their feminine energy, like I did, and lose touch with their inner strengths for the sake of feeling at peace and loving. And the inner strengths of being in this masculine nature, this male body, is about having the strength to do things and fix things and build things. It's just that energy that we kind of is in our cells. And I kind of pushed that aside, and I kind of wanted to be more peaceful and loving and less anxious about the world. And the feminine energy came in so beautifully. It's a beautiful energy of what I was looking for. And it served me for a long time. But there was a false sense of balance that I had. And I was kind of projecting this energy of peacefulness when inside me there was rage. It's hard to admit that, but there was rage inside of me. Maybe it was because my dad was killed when I was 12 and he wasn't there. Maybe it was because I felt disconnected from God. Maybe it was because I became a person I didn't want to become. All those things, whatever it was. But there was definitely anger and rage inside of me. But I played it off by being this peaceful, nice person. And it came up. It came up in a big way, and it needed to be looked at. And so if you're the kind of person that is portraying this image of being a peaceful, loving person, if you had what I had going on, you know it inside of you. Yeah, you know it inside of you that you hope no one finds out, but there is someone that knows. Source knows, creator knows. And that's a hard feeling, knowing that I'm not bullshitting anyone. So women who live in this wounded masculine society, which is basically boys that have been running the show that don't work on their stuff, that just kind of control everything, and it's their way. Women feel out of alignment because they lean into their masculine, and like I said, they go into male dominated industries and always feeling like, God, man, I feel so successful, but again, I feel so out of alignment. I feel so not successful in my beingness. And so I tend to attract women that need more support in moving more into their feminine nature, like women that want to become pregnant, but they're self-described type A personalities, and they're doing, and they can't get pregnant, or they can't keep the pregnancy. And part of that thing is that this womb, this part here in your sacral, it's what's called the second chakra. It's the color orange. It's about your creativity and your expression and your sexuality. And that's where the original being starts getting created. But if you can think of the soul coming into that place, and the soul is going, I ain't going in there. No, the way things are working right now, that's not a loving place. I gotta, you want to create life with 10 fingers and 10 toes and a heart beating and a brain working? We need to have a loving place in there. So you think of the soul going, I'm just going to wait for the right moment. And, in that masculine energy, you can't make that shit happen. You can't force life to create like that. So a lot of women will come in, they'll want to engage in different processes and understandings and experiences that awaken their feminine energy. So it's a whole different topic for another time. But one of the things that my wife does is that she does a womb healing for women. And that's been really powerful, is healing the ancestral wound of the feminine. and releasing that energy. And it's a combination of coaching, counseling, breath work, sound healing, um, energetic release, all kinds of stuff. And it's been really powerful. So because of this whole imbalance of the world that we live in. Let's see. I already talked about this. A lot of times people who feel the most overwhelmed are caretakers or people that have a low value of self-worth, or both. Caretakers usually don't allow people close to them so that they themselves can receive support. I think I mentioned this before, is this, I'm going to go give to the world, I'm going to give and feed the homeless and do all these things. And what that does, that it's this going forward energy and not allowing anyone to come because I'm too busy giving, kind of thing. And it's like this force field of protection. Other times they're subconsciously trying to prove themselves capable and worthy of love to their father. The point is, stop thinking that you're overwhelmed with something that you can fix without dealing with the underlying cause. So today, what we're talking about is not about doing a Band-Aid on the problem. It's not about spiritual bypass. And I've heard people say things like, I leave it in God's hands without taking responsibility. So yeah, everything is in God's hands, or in creator's hands, or in source's hands, not in your hands. But take responsibility, because there's a combination of doing your own work and leaving it in those hands and leaving it up to source. But there's a certain amount of taking ownership for this. Like, you need to prime the pump a little bit. And I'm finding this the same thing. Like, if we want to buy a home or sell our home or buy a car or do something in that relationship, yeah, leaving it in God's hands, it all happens. But there's a certain amount of bringing yourself into the right position to allow that to happen. And that's why this work is so important. Let's see. Oh, you might say that I'm just a type A person. This is just me, and I just get overwhelmed because I'm a type A. You weren't a type A when you were a baby. So the world, your life, your experiences conditioned you to become a type A, or an extrovert, or an introvert, or whatever personality type. And yeah, there's probably some in there that comes from the womb, comes from energetic inheritance from the parents, comes from past life, or parallel lives. So yeah, there's some in there too. But your need to be a type, there's a need there. There's a drive to be type A, and it all goes back to not feeling comfortable with being still, not feeling comfortable with being present with yourself. And so, this is just who I am. I'm type A, so I need to do. But one of the things that type A personalities are tied into, and this is from Dr. Gabor Mate. So he explains the 3 different personality types: type A, type B, and type C. So type A is the person that's go, got to do all these things, keeps himself really busy and stressed out. And they're in more alignment, not, I don't want to say that you create this, but there's in the same room of heart disease and stroke and those kind of things that are stress related. Makes sense? And then type C personalities are the ones that don't really have a great self-worth or self-love to themselves. And they're always given to other people, and they don't really think about themselves too much. And they're more in the same room of the cancers and the autoimmune and stuff like that, kind of that attacks the system from the inside, that kind of stuff. So the type B personality is the one that's more balanced in their doing and being. Okay, so that's just the more healthy outlook on those different personality types. Let's see. So the type A personality, maybe you were in a childhood where you were the one who took care of everyone. I've heard of that one a lot too. So even starting as a young child, you could be the youngest one, or a lot of times it's the oldest one that due to the circumstances, you had to feed everyone, you had to pick up everyone, you had to do everything in the household because maybe your mother was an alcoholic, or your mother wasn't available, or your father was abusive, or whatever the thing was. And then it caused you to take on that role. But then your mind created a little program of its own and said, this is how I get appreciation. This is how I get love. And it became your new identity. And so you carry that into these other relationships, and you carry this type A personality that's always doing for people. And it becomes unbalanced and overwhelming. Um, you're here because consciously or subconsciously, you know that you can change this pattern and belief, which draws in activities, situations, and experiences that create more overwhelm. So you've been living in the overwhelmed room. It's time to exit the room. So the ultimate problem is that overwhelm becomes a physiological problem. Negative emotions, unhealed and unintegrated, leads to physical pain, illness, and disease. Really let that sink in. Negative emotions, unhealed and unintegrated, leads to physical pain, illness, and disease. Without even having the medical information and the research and stuff, all the stuff that a lot of us that do this work go into, you can feel into that. You know people that lead an overwhelming life, and you see how they tend to kind of attract more of that. They can kind of, their driver's license gets expired and causes problems. They get a flat tire, run out of gas in the same day. It's just when people live in that, they kind of attract more of that. And I say this with as much tenderness and love that I can, but it is true. And the more that we can kind of really honestly look at that and say, is there a possibility that my thoughts and beliefs about myself and about the world somehow bring me in that room, that I find myself in that room? If that's true, there's something I can do about it. All right, just check in with yourself, take a deep breath. I hope you're benefiting from this. I hope you're still watching, listening. I'll keep going. Next part is we're going to go into alignment with inner knowing. Wasn't a concept that I knew very intimately 20 years ago, because no one talked about it. And no one talked about it because it was too weird. It was too out there, inner knowing. Yeah, I follow my gut. No, it's something deeper than that. So what comes with overwhelm is a lack of healthy boundaries of self, who I am, where I end and the other person begins. Not protective boundaries necessarily. It's not one that I've set my boundaries and no one can come here because I'm protecting myself from the world. That is not the cure. That is not the fix to what we're talking about. It's not to contain yourself so much that you never live your life, because you can tell that like a disease like arthritis, is your body closing down like that. That's kind of a match to that really protective kind of way of being. It's really more about knowing what your needs are, being able to say no or yes when you need to. Overwhelm is not being connected or aligned with your inner knowing. And alignment with inner knowing is paying attention to those little signals, intuitions, and feelings that lightly knock on your door of your conscious awareness. So, it's always hidden us all the time, these little feelings, and the person's going to call me right now, or I feel that the color of this is going to be yellow, or, that kind of thing that we kind of brush off. And then we go, wow, I knew that. And we just get to practice those and start to feel better about your trusting yourself, because you feel better, you'll get more practice at feeling, knowing, intuiting, and those signals. And then once you start feeling better about trusting yourself, you start trusting the world, because you feel more connected with this kind of energetic flow of the world, and how you're a part of that. But when we're in our mind and we're not connected with our inner knowing, it's kind of jerky. It's kind of it doesn't really flow in that kind of way, and we're relying on our over anxious, over analyzing mind to guide us, and that is a crazy place to be. So it's just a practice of getting more into how this feels. And over the years, I've just gotten better and better at feeling, so that now my intuition, when I'm working someone's really strong, I can kind of feel, it's hard to explain, I feel the energy of it. I feel the theme of it. I feel the program that's been created, partly because I've probably lived some of it, and then I can also feel about this person, what's going on. And it's just come from practice. And, you know, again, 20 years ago, I would not know what the heck you're talking about. And I would be more logical. But as a kid, before I got conditioned by the world, I would be so into that because it felt so natural to me. So there's a past teacher named Krishnamurti, and he would call himself J. Krishnamurti. I think there's a couple Krishnamurtis out there at least. And he was regarded as one of the greatest thinkers and religious teachers of all time. And he talks about this need for radical change in the world. And he was asked to describe, you know, what lays at the heart of his teaching. And he said this: truth is a pathless land. Man cannot come to it through any organization, through any creed, through any dogma, priest, or ritual, nor through any philosophic knowledge or psychological technique. He has to find it through the mirror of relationship, through the understanding of the contents of his own mind, through observation, and not through intellectual analysis or introspective dissection. He also is attributed to saying, it is no measure of health to be well adjusted to a profoundly sick society. Love that one. It is no measure of health to be well adjusted to a profoundly sick society. Look at the world that we live in. Look at what we say is normal. Look at what we find on TikToks and videos and what people are doing and how they're looking, and wow. And we're supposed to fit in that. That is an anxious place to be, to fit into a world like that. Now look at your ancestors. Now look back at how your ancestors lived. Yeah, there were still tigers and lions and bears to be, you know, worried about, and that kind of thing. But for the most part, there wasn't this layer upon layer of illusion of being that we are supposed to fit into. And that will create anxiety in anyone. You look at the world, and it is, from the outside looking in, this is an overwhelming, anxious place to be, looking at it from that place. And somehow we make it work. That to me is like a kind of a credit to who we are as humans, and we still make it work. It's pretty amazing. We need to take into consideration the idea that we cannot bring something beneficial to ourselves if we are simultaneously, subconsciously pushing it away from ourselves. We cannot attract peace, calm, and balance in our life if what we believe and how we live our life works against it. So it's this crazy idea that we go, I just want peace. Well, how are you living your life? How are you eating? How are you drinking? What movies do you watch? What podcasts or movies or music do you listen to? What conversations do you engage yourself in? What comes out of your mouth? And you want peace from that. It's kind of crazy. So we need to stop reacting to our life with more of what feeds overwhelm. and start to shift how we see the world and how we live. So here, think of this little phrase. Why run a race with even a penny or a pebble in your pocket? And I'm speaking to myself as much as I'm speaking to you. Daniel, you want this in your life. Well, why don't you stop doing this? I don't want to right now. Okay, well, don't complain that you don't have that. And it's not so much giving up the physical thing that I do or that you do. It's moving yourself into a different room. I want to be really clear about this. It's not about giving up alcohol or cigarettes or porn or whatever the thing is. It's not about giving up something that's not great for you. It's about allowing yourself to be in a different room of consciousness. But what our mind says is that, I need to give up this thing. No, you need to be in a different consciousness that will attract what it is that you're looking for. So when I would be in the life of distracting myself and not really looking at myself and drinking to push things down and being sarcastic and a smartass and not really being authentic and in integrity, I'm in that room. I'm in that place where I'm going to just have to deal with what comes at me, because the way I think and believe is sort of in alignment with that. Yes, I'm a good person. Yes, you're a good person. But the way that I was living my life wasn't really conducive to that. There's this idea that's kind of portrayed out into the world in movies and in professional industries that you could be a completely unethical person and make millions. And that's true. You could be a person that doesn't care about other people and have your own private island. And that's true. But there's this inauthenticity and lack of integrity and lack of real joy that's not going to be felt. And don't get me wrong, I love when someone is super wealthy and has joy and love and authenticity and a spiritual life all together as one. There are people that live that. And I love that. And I love my life. My life is abundant and I live the joy and the awesome relationship and all that. It's possible. But what we're fed with the outside world is that we don't have to have that integrity. And it's just kind of becomes a choice that this is the way I'm going to live. Regardless of what I see on the outside world, I'm going to live this way. All right, let's do this meditation. Go ahead and gently close your eyes and see through your eyelashes that there's a body that you inhabit. So you got your eyes closed, but not tightly closed. And you kind of see through your body that there's a blurry vision of your hands or your legs that are in front of you. You kind of had this thought of, a body. That's pretty cool. I have a body. If I wanted to flap my hands in the air, I would do that. But right now I'm telling my body to relax. Relax your shoulders. Relax your face and your jaw. Let your ears drop down. Let that muscle that holds your jaw in position, let that relax. Now let that go up into your forehead and let your forehead relax. Now with one big deep breath, breathe up loving energy from the earth into your root or your bottom of your spine, up the spine. Then exhale. Now breathe again. Breathe up loving energy up from the earth into your root, up the spine, over your head, and down the front. Again, breathe up loving energy up from the earth into your root, up your spine, over your head. Exhale down the front. Now deposit some of that energy in your belly. Just imagine just kind of putting some in there. Breathe up your spine, over your head, down the front. Breathe up your spine, over your head, down the front. Deposit that energy. Relax your shoulders. Relax your face. Now replace your current thought with I am. I am. I am. And feel how peaceful and wonderful it feels to realize this. This I am. Feel how this isn't a physical sensation as much as it is just a knowing. It's more of an awareness of being. This awareness doesn't have any limitations or boundaries to it. Now, do you see that there's a voice filled with random thoughts that wants you to have a reaction towards? But every once in a while, you experience a pause in the activity of your mind and these thoughts. So there's this you, the pause, and the awareness. And then there's this other aspect of you, which is everything else, the thoughts. And remember that during your childhood development, the aspects of awareness of being and your identity combined and became me. This voice, these ideas of you is called your egoic identity or egoic mind. Take a deep breath, hold at the top, and then exhale out of your open mouth. Good job. That little exercise is just meant to give you a little reference point of what being is all about and how there's this being that notices the mind and the thoughts. And the more that you practice that, the more it becomes apparent. Apparent. The mind as a child. I get it. All right, we're going to take a little bio break because I need a. All right, this next part here is about processing overwhelm when you're in the moment. So what do I do in the moment when I'm feeling overwhelmed? One of the things that I do is I pull the energy back to myself. And what I mean by that is I'm just here right now. My mind wants to take me off in some direction. My mind wants to take me into these different thoughts about what this moment means. and about this other person, about myself, and what it means about myself. You see, I was like monkey mind starting to be created, but to kind of pull the reins back and pull back to myself, and honestly, practically, specifically, how to do this is I close my eyes and I think about my heart, because my heart really kind of takes me out of my head, and if it really helps me to think about like a white button in my heart, and I think about seeing a white little dot button in my heart, and I focus on that, that brings the awareness or the attention on that part of my body. I mean, I'm sure you could do it on your little pinky finger on your left hand or something, but the heart seems like a really good center point for me. And then that causes me just to be here and just to breathe. And that's one of the most important things of this whole workshop, is about breathing. Normally we just breathe just enough so we don't die, we don't pass out, so we can get our words out. But to have that more conscious breath, I know it makes people uncomfortable when you take a deep breath or when you take a pause in between your words, but it feels so good, and it allows them to just take a pause. So when you take a pause, it allows you to kind of get back into your feeling, get back into your knowing, and not be driven by the reactions of the mind. So first step, pull your energy back to yourself. Be here right now as much as you can. You're here right now. Just imagine that you're snapping. Every time you snap your fingers, you're here right now, right now, right now, right now. Man, if we could be here right now in this moment, we would have no thoughts. We wouldn't be taken anywhere in the past or in the future. Be here right now in this moment. I even started to say blissful, but it's going to be blissful if we go to the next part of it. So we're just here right now, right now. And then the next thing that I have is, what can I do about this situation? Is there anything that I can do about it? If there's something I can do about it, then I'll do it. But if it's something that leads me into more stress, more anxiety, and building a bridge that I can't build in 5 minutes, then what can I do about it right now? The next one is, I ask myself, what is true? Not what this means to me, what it means to my mind about myself or my abilities or all that. What is true? If I'm up on stage and I'm talking to 1,000 people and I forget my lines, or I forget my script, I don't go into I'm worthless, I'm stupid, I can't believe I did this, I do this all the time. What is true right now? What's true right now is I'm standing in front of people that love me. I'm standing in front of people that totally get being up on stage in front of 1,000 people without peeing your pants. They all get it. And they can feel, they can empathize with me being up on stage. That's what's true. And at a certain time, I'm going to be able to speak. Or whatever you come to, just go to what is true. I'm here breathing. That's true. I'm aware of my surroundings. That's true. And what's probably true also is something else is being brought up. So that's my next one. So what is this situation leading my thoughts to? I'm not worthy. I'm never prepared. I always do this to myself. People aren't going to love me. What thoughts are you being led into? And what is the reality of those thoughts? The last part is that you're having these thoughts, they're leading you into some kind of overwhelm. But what is that? What's underneath all that? What are you really overwhelmed or anxious about? Not being seen? People won't like you, won't think you're important, or and then the last one is that, where does that take you? Where in your childhood did you feel the same thing? So that's the part where we get into the fix, into the healing and the integrating. So you could stop at the first 5 or 6 and say, okay, I'm aware of this. This is how it's making me feel, because I don't feel like I was prepared enough. And okay, now you're in awareness and kind of conscious understanding of it. But if you want to go the extra, like the turbo mode, the bonus, you're going to go into healing and integrating this right now. It's fine that you notice it and you can take ownership for it, but how are you going to fix it? How are you going to heal it and integrate it? And that next step is going back into what's happening right now is not about what's happening right now. You think that you're overwhelmed and feeling anxious about what's happening right now. Blow your mind. It's about what happened in your childhood. This situation has a similar signature as what you experienced when you were a child. And this is an opportunity to heal all that. Not only your childhood, but every experience that was a similar signature that led you up to this moment right now. Isn't that beautiful? Isn't that beautiful how life works that way? All this time I've been thinking, why does this shit keep on happening to me? But actually, it's this perpetual loop that my mind and my chemical processes and the communication with my body has been running over and over and over, year after year, decade after decade. But now I'm in this awareness with tools, with process. Now I can say, okay, this physiological feeling process that I'm having right now is a recognized, remembered process that's been running since this perception. Now's my opportunity to finally heal and integrate this. All right, let's move on from that. I did talk about being sensitive and making sure that if you're a sensitive person like I am, not sensitive, I mean sensitive to your surroundings and energies and emotions and that kind of thing. Have you calmly set your environment and boundaries? Because if you're sensitive and get pissed off about people crossing those boundaries and that kind of, that's kind of the step that we go through. But the more healthy way of dealing with it is to calmly and clearly setting your boundaries of what you need and you sticking to those. So in order to do that, you're just going to need more space around you. You need to know that people are not out to harm you when you're feeling, if you're sensitive or if you're not, but if you're feeling overwhelm or anxiety, people are not here to harm you. And you are the one that's feeling overwhelmed. So now's the time to kind of check in to see if you're slipping into victim consciousness and ask yourself if you've been asking for what you want, or you've just been continuing to give, and feeling not too good about asking for what you want. What I found is that if you ask for help or ask for some concessions, the truth is, if you ask, most of the time people will say yes. And that's something that we have in our mind, that they're not going to say yes and it's just going to be worse. And we kind of don't want to go down that road. But really, if you ask people, you know what, can we meet at 5:30 instead of 5 because I need to give myself some space? Can we go to this other restaurant so I get something a little bit healthier? Can we stop and get gas before we go? Because I'm just concerned we're going to, be in a place without gas stations. Can we talk about this thing so I get a better understanding about what it is that you're talking about? Instead of just going into reaction mode and shutting down. And that's what goes into the overwhelm. It's really about tapping into how you feel about things and what really feels good to you. And knowing that You're not really here to give everyone else what they want without getting your needs met. And I know there's some situations like might be in a job and your boss is demanding something of you. This is a challenging one because you think that you need to please your boss. But what if your boss is trying to see how determined you are to be a leader? What if your job is an energetic playground that you can practice these things on, that the real purpose of the job, the career, is not to make widgets. It's for you to practice this evolution of the soul through these processes. That's the one that really kind of blew my mind, is that what I thought was important, that I was changing the color of this button on a website, that's what thing I need to get right. But actually it was the dynamics of the relationships I had and the energy that was happening and my own insecurities and how that played out in my work. That's what was really happening. So here's some tips for more about processing and what to do once you start feeling that overwhelm, and how to heal and integrate that and create something different that feels more in alignment and peaceful. Number one, create space around you in the form of time and organization of tasks. So for me, I need to put everything on my calendar. You know, if I have these tasks to do, I need to put them all on a time and be okay with moving them around on the day and maybe to another day. Because if I get stuck in, you know, like I have all these things to do and take care of, I need to go fill up the water, I need to get gas, I need to go to the session, da, da, da. But it helps me to just write them down out of my mind, get them out of my head and put them on my calendar, and be okay with moving them to a place that is just not fitting today. I just don't have the time today, so I'm moving it to some other date. Like I'm working on my camper. We've got this camper that we use, and I'm working on the shower, and you know, Valor would really like to get this done, and I really want to get it done. But it's so hot in there, it's so sweaty in there. And I find that I spend too much time in there. And so I need to limit my amount of time so I could love myself doing this. I could take care of myself, only leave myself enough time. And also know that sometimes I overextend the time and I leave too little time in between one activity and the next activity. So I need to kind of buffer my time. So that's one thing. Just create that space around your activities and your tasks, that you actually have some breathing time. You have some time to, you know, get cleaned up for the next task, or have some time just to be with yourself. What about lunch? You know, give yourself that. But if we get into the habit of not eating lunch and just having some little snack, it just leads to more overwhelm. Number two, stop taking in so much data, like social media and news and sugar, but all that data, you know, Biden said this and he's acting this way, but Trump said this, and then Twitter did this, and then the Queen died, and then that, you know, it's like all this stuff. Yeah, I'm aware of these things, and I have compassion for any death that happens and what the transition is. And but God, man, that stuff can be so take you down that road, and all that stuff kind of pulls energy out of me. And it may seem something small, and I'm just watching this video and I'm just looking at this post, and I'm just, if you add them all up together, you're kind of giving your energy out to all that. So there's so many, if you've got Instagram and Twitter and Facebook and all the other stuff and the news, that's a lot of pulling your energy into something that other people want you to feel is important. And it's just very draining. And that's the question to ask. If you're feeling anxious or overwhelmed, how much of your time, especially in the morning, the first thing in the morning, how much of your time do you spend reading posts, watching videos, getting the opinions of others, and allowing that to affect your day? And then you talk about those things during your day. If I have a moment where someone cuts in front of me, I got to be careful about that stuff too, because the little reaction that I had about that incident can stick with me for weeks about, this person cut in front of me. And if I end up talking about it with another person, it's just, then it feeds into their thing. So anyway, you get the picture. Number 3, give yourself hours to work with in the morning, to do nothing, or yoga or qigong or meditation. One of the things that I do is that I'll watch inspiring, uplifting, consciousness promoting videos. Like there's a guy named Rupert Spira, who's a non-dualistic teacher with a really peaceful way about him. And if I'm going to watch a video, I'm going to watch something like that, because at the end of watching the video, I'm going to feel better and more expansive. And that's how I want to go into my day. And I'll look at my calendar and I'll read something. I'll get an email from Abraham Hicks, which is a consciousness called Abraham that gets channeled through a woman named Esther Hicks. And it's all about empowerment. And I love hearing more about empowerment. So I'll start my day reading that email, looking at my calendar, and maybe watching a video from Rupert Spira. If I do find myself like watching videos on Facebook, I slip right through like police videos and fight video. They really want to catch your attention with this street fight or this police chase or whatever the thing is. And I just flip right through those and I watch something that's inspiring. And no, I don't watch cat videos, but something that's uplifting, not just something draining and what's the word? Zombie. I want something that actually lives, not just makes me giggle because this cat is doing something silly. I want to watch something that's truly inspiring. So it's really about doing that too. Number 4, give yourself a cool down period at night before bed. Going straight from the computer into bed is kind of crazy. You're not only in that electromagnetic field of the computer, but the computer actually kind of turned on your brain, and then you're trying to go to sleep. Man, if you add that with some crappy videos or some negative thing that you read, like before I go into a session, I don't read any emails or take any phone calls. That has it, the possibility of putting me into a state of thinking about that when I should be here right now. So give yourself the cool down period before you want to go. You want to have beautiful dreams of flying and making love and whatever else, but you don't want to have dreams that are a reflection of what you're just into on the computer. Number 5, determine to know yourself and establish healthy boundaries. And what I mean by that is to know yourself is to know your patterns, know your beliefs, know your thoughts about things, where they come from. Maybe not all in one moment, but just kind of consciously start to inquire about yourself. And you start peeling away, it's like peeling away these layers of what you thought about yourself into more and more truth. That's all these people have been doing that are awakened or enlightened or spiritual teachers. They start out being in the crap and having, most of them have been in this kind of life that was unstable or unhealthy and stuff like that. And they just did some inquiry, and it just led to more and more of the same inquiry, more kind of becoming or coming back to what they once were. Let's see, number 6, pull back from being everyone's caretaker, even if it makes you look uncaring, selfish, or self-centered. Pull back from being everyone's caretaker, even if it makes you look uncaring, selfish, or self-centered. It's kind of that mountain that I needed to climb of just being overwhelmed and anxious is because I'm doing so much for people. But if I stop doing that for people, then they're not going to look at me the same way. But it's actually more like, if you keep that pump running, they're going to keep siphoning off from that pump. But if you stop that pump, they'll find another pump they'll find another thing to maybe take care of their own needs. But it allows me to kind of find myself again. Number 7, last one, calm your heart and your pulse. Use more of your body's feeling and inner knowing to guide you. And breathe. Calm your heart and your pulse. Use more of your body's feeling and inner knowing to guide you, and breathe. So let's take a deep breath. All right, let's talk about moving stuck energy, because moving this energy is important to get it out of our body. Because when we keep it into us, it kind of lodges itself into our cells of our body, into that body memory. So how do we get rid of that? So another way to say it is that we need to leave the room of that energy, or remove the glasses of that. It's like a perspective, or like a coloring of our life. It's the negative emotions of where we've been sitting. So, but to leave, we need to witness it. We need to see it for what it is and where it came from. So it's not just letting it go and doing some sort of a spiritual bypass with it, give it love and light. That's only part of it. The real piece to it is that, we're here to experience, we're here to know and understand and to feel. And some of the stuff, it's not very intuitive to us to go towards something to let it go. But this is what I've learned, and what people are learning is this feeling that I don't want to have. Actually, I need to go into it. I need to go into it. I don't want to feel anger. I want to be peaceful. Go into the anger. Where does that come from? Because what they say is, what you resist, you persist. And there's some truth to that. So once this feeling, once this thought, this belief, this negative thing that's going on, once it's fully acknowledged where it comes from, why you're feeling this way, and it doesn't take this long. I'm not talking about 10 years of therapy with this, but just acknowledging where it comes from. Then you could fully see it. Once something is fully seen and understood, then there's no need to experience it anymore. It's that kind of thing. You see it, you understand it, you don't have to experience it so much. And I kind of have this feeling about my dream time too. When I have a dream that's putting me in this place that I do not want to be in, or being with someone I don't want to be with, but the feelings of that is showing up. It's kind of like, well, I'm glad I had that dream, because now I don't need to play this out in this life. So I get to have both these things. Okay, now I had the dream, it made me feel this way. Where does that come from? Okay, so it's like my dream is like my extra credit. All right, so here's different ways of moving energy. Number 1, get a different perspective. Go to a different place that you've never been to, and be there and listen to the new wisdom that shows up, and open your mind. So you know how this feels. You go on top of some rock somewhere, or you go sit on the beach somewhere, or you kind of move to a different room in your house, or anything that when I used to shift my cubicle to another room, or office to another room, it really helped to get a different perspective. And this is something that old wisdom from like Toltec, Aztec, Mayan kind of philosophy would say, in order to change your stuck patterns, you got to change your perspective, or change your rituals during the day. And modernize, it might be something like, instead of taking a shower first and cooking your breakfast, maybe you cook your breakfast and take your shower. Instead of taking the 405, take the 5 to get to work. It's just taking some different things, so it just kind of changes the energy to kind of break that monotonous pattern. Because what it tends to turn into is that I do this, and I do this, and I'm familiar with this, and then we add more and more stuff to that pattern, that daily routine, and it becomes overwhelming. And we get more and more used to this new normal, and then it kind of builds and builds and builds until something has to blow. So get a different perspective. Shift your patterns and daily rituals. Move around your daily tasks to different process places in your day. Take a different route. Eat different food. Maybe eat healthier food. Meet new people. Take in new information about something. Maybe you want to learn the guitar or the piano or learn a new language or something. It's not so much learning the thing, it's about doing something different, and then you're breaking that pattern. So I think this really helped me actually to release the idea that I wasn't good, I wasn't an expert at many things, or that I would do something and then quit it. It wasn't necessarily about doing the thing, it was about bringing something else new in there to kind of create more creative energy. So when there's a problem, then there needs to be a solution. When there's a question, there needs to be an answer. But in that process, the source energy or God, animates that energy and moves through that energy. And that's what kind of creates more and more life, more creation. But if we get in this stuck thing of this pattern without anything new, we start to die. We start to kind of atrophy, and it kind of brings us closer and closer to not being so excited about being in this life. So we need those extra things. Distract the programs of your mind. How? Create, do sound healing, do breath work with intention. So gongs, drums, didgeridoo, crystal bowls, all those things can be different distractions in a really good way, in a very conscious healing way. And I found that there's so many different modalities that I've tried out. You got tapping, emotional freedom technique, theta healing, Reiki, craniosacral, all these things, psycho-spiritual, all these things. But there's a certain commonality between all these, and it's distraction. So when I'm playing the didgeridoo to someone, I'm playing a crystal bowl, or there's energetic healing or something, there's something that creates some distraction of the mind. And when that can go in there, it can distract the running programs of the mind. That old negative program can be stopped, or have a new program introduced that's more healthier to the system. And if that's the way it works, that's something that we can play around with. We can work with that. The other thing is move your body. To release the energy, move your body. You can play, you can dance, you can roll on the floor, you can jump up and down. You can do qigong, you can do yoga, you can do fasting, like a day fast. You can do a cleanse. You can juice for a certain amount of days, just something to kind of break up that, and that's going to help release energy. One of the things that you can do, I won't be able to stand up with this, but imagine yourself standing up, raising your hands above your head, spreading your legs out like horse riding stance, and then with one big breath, just blow that air out. And this is also a tantra technique that helps you kind of get into more present sexual energy. And one of the things that you can do is you can clap your hands, you can do this with your hands and kind of imagine that you're releasing energy out of your hands. You can do that technique of throwing the energy down to the floor. It's also a technique that's used in qigong. Is to release energy. You can take your hand and kind of pat your arm like this all the way up 9 times, and 9 times all the way down, and then go to the other hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And then you could pat your body. Qigong has these kind of twisting movements, and you can kind of pat your chest here. You can pat the back of your kidneys. All these things. This is what qigong does for me. Is it helps me release and balance energy. And like before I go to a session, maybe I just had a phone call and it was kind of a tense phone call, or maybe I just got out of a session, I'm going right into another one. I go in the room and I close the door and I jump up and down and I do little twisting techniques to kind of release the energy. And I feel like yoga is a really good one. If you get into the practice of that, it doesn't have to be an hour long. You could do 5 or 10 minutes, but anything to kind of get into this space, which is really, to me, it's wringing out stuck energy. So if you get into, warrior 1, warrior 2, and tree pose and all these things, it's this way of putting your body in this position that kind of rings it this in this place that allows the energy to come out, and then you come out of the pose and it's released even more. So it's just, we have these tools available to us that help us do these, but it doesn't help if we don't use them. All right, this next one I want to talk about, because I want to give you a reference point of what life in balance and in the flow looks like. Because if we know one person can do this, then we know it's a reality in our, and if we're focused on that, we have an intention for that, we could bring more of that or create more of that in our life. So you know the you know the shows Naked and Afraid and Alone. I love those shows because, you know, people go out there and they're naked and they're afraid, and they've got to like 21 days to go make things happen, get a shelter and get beyond their ego about their body and being naked. All that stuff is just very intriguing to me. And then you get these people in Alone where they go out into the coldest, most desolate mountains, and there's no time limit. And some, they go out there like 10 people or something, and whoever is the last one wins $1 million or something. And what you see with these things is the people that really do well, one is they have their emotional health, and they have enough ego to be a leader, but not so much that can't be a team player. They can't work with other people. And some of these people that are in the alone thing, of course, they're alone, so they're by themselves, but they have this masculine energy to go forward, but they also have their emotions healthy and recognized. So that seems to be the heaviest burden on people, is the emotional toll, being away from family, being away from friends. Who am I? What does this mean? I can't do all that stuff. It's a mix of your physical skills and your emotional skills. So that really intrigues me. But the added thing that takes someone to the very beyond the struggle, beyond the making things happen and getting lucky with catching a fish or something, the people that get into the zone, you know, they get into this rhythm of the season and the rhythm of the animals walking down this path at a certain time, and the natural thing, the natural process that's happening. Those are the people that really succeed, and they get themselves into that rhythm. They're not fighting against it anymore. They're not frustrated with how come I'm not getting something. They're very flexible in how they move to different techniques. They move from ice fishing to hunting to trapping to whatever, and they just kind of go with that flow. And they're like in it, man. They're like yelling in this just exalted, yes, I'm living this. I'm not conquering it. That's the thing. I'm not conquering it, but I'm taking what nature provides for me. And it's almost like they could live there forever if they didn't want to go back and spend the $1 million. Another example of this is Sedona versus southwestern Colorado. So I live in Sedona, and my wife and I took a trip to Colorado for 10 days, and we did this hot spring tour, and we went up through Durango and Ouray and Pagosa Springs and all. It was awesome. But what I saw from that area is that although Sedona is beautiful and gets actually a lot of water and snow, so everything's pretty green here, there's a different feeling when you go to southwestern Colorado, at least in the springtime. Everything is so abundant, everything's so green, everything is growing, the flowers are growing, herbs are being created, you know, people are creating soaps and oils and everything because everything is growing. And there's this feeling like anything you want to grow will grow there, at least in that time of the year. And in Sedona, not everything grows here. There's only specific things that grow. But that just gave me a really kind of being in the feeling of that abundance of everything grows no matter what it is almost. And then to being in Sedona, that there's a different appreciation of what grows here. So it just kind of gave me a different perspective on that. Oh, I want to talk about this woman, Rel Sun. So Rel Sun was a female surfer in the 70s, and I think in part of the 80s. She was a Hawaiian woman who loved to surf, but she also loved diving down for her food for the day. So she would go spearfishing and catch her food in the form of octopus or fish or crab or lobster or whatever she found. And whatever she got, she put up on her surfboard that was floating on the water. And then she, whatever a shark didn't take from her, she'd paddle it back to shore. And then that would be her food for the next couple of days. But she didn't have like a real corporate career. I don't know if any real career kind of thing, but she did this for herself. And but she also taught surfing to kids, or made contests for kids so they could surf and win these contests or participate in these contests. And I think about somebody that lived that kind of life, and then I think about like someone that lives a more of a like a pretty stressful job, maybe a stockbroker or a mortgage banker or something that has more that around it. And she just chose to live that lifestyle. And I think, wow, it's just in the choices that we have about what kind of perceptions that we want to have about ourselves, or what we want to be known for, or what title we want to have. And for her, she was just a professional surfer and one promoter of kids surfing contests. And I really appreciate that. She's got this movie called Queen of Makaha. I think that's what it's called, Rel Sun, Queen of Makaha. And just a really good, inspiring video. You might find it in VHS if you're familiar with that format. But a really good story about a woman that just kind of lived her life regardless of what other people wanted her to live, regardless of the breast cancer that she was going through, regardless of doctors telling her she needed to stop doing surfing and just do the chemotherapy. She just really lived her life, and that caused her to live a more authentic life, I guess is the word. All right, so I'm gonna check the time. So being in the flow has a lot to do with how I make decisions in my life. I'm open and receptive, but I'm making decisions from a feeling of excitement or wonder, not from fear or obligation. That was me before. I would make decisions that kind of made me look intelligent and capable of myself. But now I just make more decisions that are more in excitement and wonder. This leads to days filled with fulfilling experiences without guilt. And it leads my wife and I to do a ritual every night where we share our experiences, actually our highlights. So we don't go to bed talking about the terrible thing that happened or this thing that was said. We really are just talking about the things that really were highlights in our day, and we do our best to stick with that. Being in the flow means feeling what my body consciousness is telling me about what I'm thinking about doing. So in the flow is expansive, and it's not predetermined very much. So in the past, dramas were created when expectations followed my decisions and reactions. So instead responses ensued. And now, I'm at the Renaissance Fair or I'm at Disneyland or something, and there's no set agenda that I need to do this and this. This is not regimented like that. We need to go to this ride, then this one, then this one. There may be like, man, I want to hit that ride first because I'm excited about that, and that one's going to fill up. But the rest of the day is about letting things transpire. And you know what that feels like when you let things happen and you meet this person and you get into this conversation and they give you this gift, or stuff like that happens when we're in the flow. So that's more about how it happens with me now. We are naturally in the flow when we have no expectations, conditions, or resistance. It's challenging to my mind because my mind wants to label, to judge, to analyze, and put things into this order, to judge everything. But it's really feels good to my heart. My heart just wants to live and to be free. I want to say something also about excelling and being successful, but you can push yourself to excel in things, but without the feelings of insecurity and overwhelm. So, I know there's people that really want to push and excel and be successful and build their business. That's awesome. But to have also the feeling of overwhelm with that, and then insecurity if you don't do that, that's when that pushing that stuff becomes unhealthy. But you can have both. You can have this push to excel and be successful without that overwhelm, and have this more balance in your life. It's more like setting priorities to things, setting schedules to things that you need to get done, but also scheduling your playtime. Make sure that you give space around yourself, and make sure that you have a buffer time in between things. All those things kind of give it a more natural progression. And it's actually less work with more success when you kind of do it that way. That's what I found, at least. This next one I want to talk about, reevaluating your life. So there needs to be a little bit of awareness about this, because when you're in overwhelm, or when I was in overwhelm and anxiety, I was anxiety because I didn't really want to be there. I was in overwhelm because I was trying to do something that I wasn't really joyful about. And there's a thought that, you can't really do stuff that's joyful to you, because who are you to do that? But you can. And I'm a living proof of that. It took me a little bit to get here because of my resistance and my own thoughts about things, but it is definitely possible. That's what I do. But to ask yourself, why do you do what you do? And then after answering that, ask, why is that? Why do I do what I do? And after you do that thing, how do you feel afterwards? And if you feel great, that's great. Keep doing more of those kind of things. But if you want more of that feeling, yeah, keep doing that. But if you don't want more of that feeling, why are you doing that? And I completely understand that I have certain obligations, or if I don't do this, I'll go to jail, or I'll lose everything, or my family will leave me. But there is a path towards doing what you love to do by incorporating, feeding into your life the things that you really, really, really want to do. But part of that process is finding out how you want to feel. And what's really cool is that how you want to feel actually goes back to your childhood. If you want to feel more security, or more tenderness, or more love, or more quality time, it's going to heal that part of your childhood. So that's the neat part. That's why you find a lot of people, they'll work with kids. They'll find themselves working at the YMCA, or they'll do working with troubled kids or disabled kids or something. And really they say they're doing it for these kids, but actually they're doing it for themselves in the most beautiful way. That you get some feeling from this. You get some comfort of knowing that you're doing something for these kids that you didn't have when you were a kid. So in a sense, you're sort of doing it for these kids, but you're actually doing it for yourself. And it's totally fine. That's totally beautiful to do it for yourself. Get over this idea that you're going to feel guilty that you're doing it for yourself. You feel good. And if you're not feeling good about doing it, then you should be doing something else. Admit the fact that you're doing it and it feels good to you. And just feeling good to you is enough. Just feeling good for you is enough. You are worthy and you deserve to feel good about what you do. Yes, it looks like kids are benefiting from this. That's an extra benefit. But the fact that you benefit from that is awesome. And that's really, to me, it's the most important thing. Let's see. Decide to do what you do because it is really joyful. If you're doing it and you're not loving it and you're waiting for the payoff, or you're working your ass off with the payoff will come sometime, I hope that comes before your last breath, because there's so many stories of people of working, and they never get that final payoff, but they're hoping for something. And a lot of times, sometimes I'll hear about a doctor or a surgeon or something that really has a title that's really important, and they're doing amazing work. But if they identify so much with that title, and then it comes time for them to leave that industry due to some change in their life, they've lost who they are, because they don't have that identity anymore. So make sure that you're fulfilling yourself in some way that gives you more joy in your life that's outside of what you do for a living. If you can have all of it, that's awesome, and I go for that. I found that there are always greater plans and solutions and gifts in store for us than we can even dream of if we allow them. But my brain wants to filter stuff out, what it thinks is possible, and my ego wants to protect myself from harm. So it invents these what ifs. If I do this, then this might happen, then it might be bad for me. But coming back to this microsecond, there is nothing but my consciousness, not even me, the dad, the grandfather, the teacher, because it is all built up from something that was not of this moment. Let me expand on that. If I allow myself to be here right now, there's no title or role to me. So if I'm staying here, that the truth of what I'm living is right here, right now, and not the role or the title that I have. So that kind of takes off the pressure of me becoming something, becoming a title. So yeah, I've had roles as father, I've had roles of grandfather, but who I am right now is this consciousness, is this awareness. And just diving into that concept a little bit more would really help to understand things and live a more authentic life. Let's see. There's a phrase that really helped me to understand where my life could take me, that would bring more joy and less overwhelm in my life, was this phrase of the sentence. The negative experiences that you have had in this life are representative of the theme that you or your soul chose to explore. Again, the negative experiences that you have had in this life are representative of the theme that you or your soul chose to explore. So there's a certain theme that's been going on in my life: guilt, obligation, feeling insignificant, overwhelm, anxiety. But that's not the end of my story. That's what I lived through. But how can I flip that around and live a life of peace and joyfulness and liberation and freedom and expression and all those things? That's what I'm here for, the whole experience. But just because I experienced this certain theme, this negative theme, it's what they call a negative imprint in my early part of my life. But that's not the end of me. I'm choosing that to be part of my evolution as a soul. All right, how are we doing? I want to make sure that we all get to leave at the right time and I don't hold anybody up. I'm going to share with you what I called my universal statement of being. And it's just this statement of myself that says, this is who I am, damn it. And it's just an honest look at myself. And, one of the things that my egoic mind tries to do is it's actually tries to keep me small. And, when you say egoic, you think that, you're bigger than who you really are. But part of my process and part of my path has been really being admitting to how big I am, admitting to how wonderful I am, how beautiful I am. And it's really fighting through this wanting to keep myself humble, wanting to keep myself small and approachable. But I realize I can have both. I can be humble and approachable and loving and beautiful and know who I am. And so this statement of being is this statement. And it's just something that it was introduced to me from one of my teachers named Michael Hamilton. And some of you know this name. And he would make these statements and he would just state them out like this. And I would go, holy crap, man, it's kind of, kind of ruffled my feathers a little bit. But then I realized, why is my feathers being ruffled on this? And it's because he allows himself to speak his truth. He allows himself to be who he is. And who he is the person that is vulnerable, that is insecure, but is also powerful, that is also states who he is. And we all have our tendencies to kind of fall out of it, but this is who I'm stating who I am. Here it is. So because I had issues with not feeling appreciated, acknowledged, and significant, I start off like this. In my universe, coming from here in my universe, I am appreciated, acknowledged, significant, guilt-free, and liberated. I am being my true, authentic, highest version of self now. I am grateful to have had all the experiences that I've ever had. I am in love with and adore my amazing wife, and I am loving, respecting, and valuing myself more than anyone or anything. I am responsible and accountable for my thoughts, words, actions, and my wake. I bless others with my conscious presence and open, receptive heart. I carry no insistence on a specific outcome. I embrace the unknown. I am at the will of spirit. I always do what I need to do when I need to do it. I always give what I'm guided to give when I'm guided to give it. I always have what is relevant for me to have. If I don't have it, I don't need it. I always know what I need to know when I need to know it. I always receive what is relevant for me to receive. I always say what I need to say when I need to say it. I am where I need to be when I need to be there. I am an alchemist, raising the frequency. I am here, I am now. Just let that settle in. Let whatever reactions or responses or resistance or feelings, let them all just kind of settle back down. Maybe some words in there cause some triggers or something. Maybe the one about me loving myself more than anything or anyone. That's a good one. And it's just me kind of standing in this and being who I am and not being who I'm not. And not making excuses for it. And from this place, I can be a more effective lover. I can be more an effective, authentic presence. And sometimes I'm insecure. All right. Last part, I'm going to give you some effective tools for balance and give you a new perspective, Some of these things relate to overwhelm and anxiety directly, and some things are just help you open up into a new perspective of being. So here it comes. One is Cloud Atlas, the movie. If you haven't seen this movie, watch this movie 10 times at least. I've watched this movie about 35 times because I get something new from it every single time. And it opens me up into this understanding that I don't understand, into this knowing of there's something happening here with life and with the world and with the universe that I will never know fully. But it's hard to explain, but watch this movie without trying to make it fit into any other idea of a movie that you've ever watched. And that's why I say watch it 10 times, because it's going to hopefully kind of key in things and open up things for you. There's another movie that just came out, Everything Everywhere All at Once. And the idea of this movie that I really got from it is it's another one of these kind of jumbled up movies that goes back and forth, but determine your desired feeling, make a change in your habitual reality, bring your body out of the past and into the present moment, and then connect with the reality that already exists, and then give it your focus and activate emotions around it. That's what that movie said to me, that what I wanted to manifest in my life had that in it. I'll say this one more time. Determine your desired feeling. That's what you want, is the feeling of that thing. Make a change into your habitual reality. Now bring your body out of the past and into the present moment. Be here right now. Connect with reality that already exists. This reality that has the feeling that you want already exists. You just need to put yourself into that reality. So now give that reality your focus and then activate your emotions around it. Meaning there's a feeling you want to have, there's a reality of that feeling that already exists. Create the feelings that attract that reality, and you'll find yourself in that reality. So it was really cool to kind of get that message. A book, Power of Now, this is the one that helped me really understand my mind and my what he calls the egoic identity, that there's this identity of self that kind of shows up in a certain way, and I'm the one who's aware of it, and it tries to manipulate me and how I show up in the world. And that book really kind of shuffled things around in a good way. So that was the first book that I read that kind of got things going. For men and for women to understand men, The Way of the Superior Man, which written by David Data, and it kind of really challenged me to let go of my little boy pants and put on my big boy pants and my man pants, and kind of challenged me to look at myself honestly, and just kind of come out of that insecurity that I was living. And it challenged that part of me. It's not a big read, but it was very effective. Another book, Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself by Dr. Joe Dispenza. He's talking more of a logical, chemical brain responses. What would you call that? Biochemical responses of changing your habitual nature, your personality. So your habits, your beliefs, which turns into a personality, which turns into the way that you live your life, that there's a way to use the way the brain and the mind operates to change that and create more habits, better patterns, not just like positive thinking and affirmations, not that really. It's a much deeper understanding about how this all works. So really good book to read. The one thing that I'm feeling that book is missing is the emotional part. So it goes into like the chemical responses in the brain and all that very awesome understanding of that, but less about the emotional field kind of thing. But you can get that in other places. A couple books to read about knowing how our body connects with our mind, and how with every illness and disease and pain that we have in our body, there's always an emotional cause or catalyst for that. And this is all backed up by science and research and decades of therapy work, and just amazing stuff. So the two books that I use, actually three books, Metaphysical Anatomy by Yvette Rose, When the Body Says No by Dr. Gabor Mate, and Heal Your Body by Louise Hay. And then this other concept that I kind of came up with, influenced by so many other people, is what I call the personal navigation system. And the idea is that through our electromagnetic attraction and repulsion and vibration and frequency and quantum physics, we attract like vibration of frequency in the form, in the most basic form is consciousness, but shows up as form and shows up as events and situations and relationship. But it all goes down to vibration and frequency. So as I move through my life, I see how I'm doing, one, but by what my body is telling me through illnesses and bumps and scratches and broken bones, and all those things have an emotional piece to it. Arthritis, carpal tunnel, all those things have a certain emotional piece to it. And by listening to my body and knowing the emotional piece to it, now I can see how I'm doing emotionally, because I live in an emotional world. The other part of it has how I'm doing on my journey, how I'm doing in this life, that I had a certain idea, a certain intention when I came into this reality. How am I doing in that? And how I'm doing it is by what I reflect, what I attract towards me. So as you see people in your life, the good ones and the bad ones, the ones that really lift you up and the ones that make you wonder why you're hanging out with them, all those people, how I feel about them, how I judge them, and what they reflect back to me, the feelings that they make me feel, these are all reflections kind of presented back to me to show me how I'm doing. but it's not, it doesn't have to be like a 100% reflection. See this asshole you're in front of, you are that. It's not that kind of thing. It's a combination of how it makes me feel, how I'm judging this person because they're on the street. They shouldn't be on the street. They shouldn't be begging for money. And what do I judge about that? Why don't I go into compassion? Couldn't I see myself on the street begging for money if I really need to? Or all those things are just reflections back to me that help me understand myself and my life. And it helps me to navigate my life if I'm in tune with those presentations that are happening to me. Now, if you open that even further, it's not only the people, it's the plants. It's the plants that, you know, they're in front of you. It's the plants that prick you, that you are growing, that you smell. It's the animals that cross your path. It can really start to expand, that you start to become more and more aware of your surroundings. And instead of being in judgment and resistance to certain things, why is this coyote crossing my line and threatening my dog? No, what is coyote? Coyote is the trickster. Coyote is telling you not to be so serious about your life. Why is this eagle flying around my property? Oh, it's telling you to get a different, higher perspective about your life. All those things, and when you start looking at this, there's a way to look at these things without going too far, you know, quote, out there, but just being aware of these things. Like, you say, God, give me a sign. Well, I've been giving you signs in the form of this plant next to you, or this ant next to your foot that's causing you to look at life differently. It just causes you to be more aware of things. So it's not so much that you're in an overwhelming bubble of anxiety. And when you're more aware of these things, you start to be in the natural flow of things. And you go, wow, okay, I just got this message. All right, I'm going to be aware of this. And your way of being and way you're living your life just starts to take on a more of a natural flow of, like there's people in the Alone and the Naked and Afraid, the masters at that. They're aware of the different plants. They're in tune with this. They're intuiting where to go and what to pick and what's going on. So that's what it turns into, as being in that natural flow. Another one is emotional health. Just be aware of the emotions and the processes that help you to heal and integrate those emotions. YouTube, if you look up Way of Mastery is supposed to be a channeling of Christ consciousness, not necessarily Jesus Christ, but the consciousness of a Christ. And, Jesus Christ of what was one. And it's like just sitting with that consciousness and have it being kind of presented to you without any religion or dogma or guilt or anything, that puts you in that same consciousness and says, this is what it sounds like. And I just love sitting in that. Heart Math Institute, it's a website and a company and a research institute that studies the electromagnetic and physical properties of the heart. And it just kind of says things like the electromagnetic energy goes out at least 6 feet from the heart, which affects different energies from other hearts. And there's electrical and electromagnetic properties that we can get in tune with that are much more powerful than our own brain, and so much more. So dive into that. The 3 areas of focus for self-mastery, which is what we're talking about here, is self-mastery, is mastering the self and your emotions and your spiritual nature and your physical body, all the aspects of that. The first one is conscious media, that what you listen to and what you watch, like this, things that lift you up, things that open you up, and realizing that some things don't quite open you up, and sometimes they close you down, and sometimes they have the effect of lowering your consciousness vibration. Top Gun, great movie. Jason Bourne, great movies, very exciting, amazing CGI. But did they really lift you up in consciousness? They might have lifted your excitement and hit some endorphins, but they didn't really lift you up in consciousness. Watch movies that open up your heart and cause you to be more present in your heart. Those are the things that really affect us. Number 2, conscious nutrition. What you eat, what you drink, enjoy the chocolate cake, enjoy the beer or the margarita, but just know that it's not going to raise you up in consciousness. And you, in order to kind of stay on this kind of path, you're going to want to balance that out a little bit and know that you need to start doing things that'll start to help raise up and not be detrimental to that consciousness. Number three, the last one, is conscious communication. What you engage in conversation with people. It may be an important thing to discuss vaccination or masking or Biden or Trump, or all these things that are presented to us to make us feel that we need to talk about these and get fired up about it. But is it raising your consciousness and maybe raising your knowledge and your understanding of things, but not necessarily your consciousness and your loving awareness that really supports you in this world to kind of keep vibrating at a high place. So kind of take that with a grain of salt into what you really spend your energy on. Last I'll say is choose love over fear. Make your view of the world favor you. You have permission to do that it favors you in your life. So instead of reacting to the world as you go out, and see the world as coming to you. So instead of the world coming to you, you're seeing yourself as attracting this vibration that you're in tune with. And that's what you have control over, is affecting that attunement. See the world is here to love and support you, but not here to love and support your egoic needs, but here to love and support your soul's evolution. That's all I have, except for this one last piece. I have a men's retreat happening October 14th through the 17th in Sedona. It's going to be awesome. We're going to be jumping in the creek, going on the rocks, doing breath work, meditation, yoga, qigong every day. Got my twin brother coming. He's going to be the photographer, but he's always going to be a participant. I'm really excited about this. Look on my website, danielposney.com, for other events that I have going on with myself and with my amazing wife. Keep in contact with me. And if you have any questions that you wanted me to dive in deeper, just give me an email, danielposney@gmail.com. I would love to dive deeper with you and give you exactly what you're looking for. I hope this really benefited you and blew your mind and opened up your heart and whatever is meant to be. Thank you so much. Bless you. I love you and hope to see you next time. Thank you.